Hi, I'm April.
And I'm Missy, and this is SheelaNaGig.
Glad you're all here today.
Welcome.
Welcome. And Missy, why are we here?
Well, each week. Why are we here, April? I don't know. It's an existential question.
Yes.
Why are we here?
Actually, I didn't mean that to be an existential question. I'm just trying to cue you.
Okay. Well, as you know, each week we explore our own SheelaNaGig, and that to us is a woman whose strength and perseverance has led her to greatness, who empowers us, inspires us. Maybe one you've heard of before, and we just want to share a little bit more, or maybe it's somebody you've never heard of, and we definitely want to share more because you need to know. We feel like you need to know.
We do.
Yes. But how are you?
I'm well. Good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Yeah, I am. My daughter turned 12 a couple days ago. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You're 1 year away from teen. Ooh.
Well, she's already like a little teenager.
I was going to say. She showed up early to the teen party.
Is she? Oh my God. So true. So she wanted to go with her best friend. They had the day off school. Strangely enough, it just happened to be this teacher day.
Uh-huh.
So she lucked out. She got the day off of school, and she wanted me to take her and her best friend shopping at the Grove here in Los Angeles. And it's a fancy mall. It's a very fancy mall. And so, yeah, they wanted to go there. And we got there. And I had my camera. And I was like, let me take a picture of you guys in front of the Chinese New Year decorations. They're like, oh, my God, no. Are you kidding me? Oh, my God, stop it. Don't embarrass my mother. They were like, oh, my God, you're talking so loud. Can you stop it? They were so embarrassed.
Oh, wait. My children are older.
Yeah.
And as children who have gotten through you are the most embarrassing human being on the planet stage.
Yes.
It is a stage, and it lasts longer than any mother wants it to. At least that's my experience. But they do get over it.
Yeah, I didn't really I had it somewhat with my son, but not nearly as bad.
I think daughters are a little bit more brutal.
Yeah.
Although my son told me that I was vanilla last week. Yeah.
Last week he called you vanilla?
He totally did. He called me vanilla.
Oh my gosh, you didn't tell me that.
I know.
No, what was the context of him calling you vanilla?
So he was talking about his girlfriend's parents, who are much younger and apparently a lot more hipper and interesting. And he said, yeah, we've been putting off having you guys meet because, you and Dad, you're so vanilla.
Oh my God. Yeah, her parents are so awesome. They wouldn't even give her a car loan.
Well, we're not going to trash her parents.
And you guys gave her a car loan. I'm just going to mention that. That is so nice.
We're stupid, depending upon your position, but...
No, I think it's very nice. And she's a nice girl.
She's a nice girl.
I like her. She's very nice. I like your son, too. So it was funny, though, just to go back to the Grove.
Uh-huh.
So I had to disappear. And, they let me buy them lunch first.
Kids are so good about that.
Yeah.
They let you buy them lunch, and usually they'll let you buy them a few products or things. But then they want you to disappear.
Yeah.
Into thin air. Don't make us accidentally run into you. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting your story.
No, it's totally true. It's totally true. But, I kind of just walked around and went into the Coach store, and I went into the Brandy Melville store, which I'm really anti Brandy Melville ever since that documentary. And I always, my daughter still likes it. She's like, oh, who cares? So I decided just to kind of pop in just to, I thought she might be in there. I actually was secretly going to go try to find them and be like, oh my gosh, what are you doing here? So that was kind of my idea, but I couldn't find them anywhere.
See, maybe I am vanilla. I wouldn't have thought to do that.
Oh my God, totally. And so I went in there and dressed up to go to the mall, and these two 16-year-old girls came up and said, oh my God, we love your look and your coat is so cute. And I was like, yes, all right, thank you very much,
Some validation.
Yeah, and I made sure to tell my daughter and her father.
Much needed validation.
Yeah. So I wandered about, and I ended up going to World Market and sitting in their comfy furniture and texting. And then when I found them, I think she was feeling a little guilty. I think she was feeling she's like, oh Mom, I missed you. Oh, did you?
Good. Yeah. We're not above.
And then her friend said she felt really bad. She felt bad. And I'm like, well,
she should have.
So
Yeah, right.
tomorrow's the big birthday party though, with 5 of her girlfriends spending the night. So
Can I
get ready
say
for
you're a
that.
pretty awesome mom? I mean, for me, the birthday party would have been over at the Grove.
I know. I got the goodie bags ready. They're sitting on the piano.
I
Do
saw
so. Got
them.
the
They're
goodie
very
bags
cute.
ready. Got the games ready. Although they're gonna. They kind of want to do that. Oh, we got like a perfume making kit and we got a lip gloss making kit too.
Wow,
So
I may crash the party.
you should crash the party. Anyway, I digress.
Well, just catching up a little.
I know we are catching up.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to catch up, right?
But I am excited about my Sheela. I do
I'm
have to
excited
say.
too.
So my wonderful Sheela for today, and I can't wait to talk about her, is
Excited.
Margarete Emile Charlotte Steffin.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, she was a German actress and writer who is known as one of many collaborators and, might I say, lovers of the famous poet and dramatist Bertold Brecht.
Ugh, Brecht. Yes.
Brecht.
Yes.
Do we know anything about Brecht, Missy?
A bit.
A bit. I have a feeling she knows a little bit about.
I know a bit about
Marguerite.
We've talked about Zelda.
Yes, and okay, so
Yeah.
you know a lot.
Well,
or at least
a bit.
I think where I'm going.
Remember, I need to learn more because remember I
Right.
said in the beginning, like sometimes it's like you know the person, but you need to know more.
Yes.
I need to know more, so
Okay.
I'm all ears. I'm very excited.
Just to backtrack a little on Bertold Brecht, he was one of the most influential playwrights of the 20th century, and his works included very famous pieces, including the Three-Penny Opera with composer Kurt Weill, Mother Courage and Her Children, The Good Person of Szechuan, and The Resistible Rise of Arturo Ui. His importance to the 20th century theater can't be really understated. It was pretty massive.
Yes.
His operas and plays championed the idea of alienation, and he worked hard through his pieces, well, we'll explore more about his pieces,
Yeah.
to snuff out writers of the time like Ibsen and Stanislavski and their realistic drama. He combined text and stagecraft and imagery and movement into what we think of now as the spoken word that we associate with performance art. He was very much in your face, and he strived to make his audience really think rather than feel. Mm-hmm. It was noted that he wanted people to, if they had to feel, they should feel horror. As Lee Walkner, an LA playwright, is quoted as saying, if he was going to hold up a mirror to you, the mirror was supposed to really make you feel disturbed by what you saw.
I was going to say, it's supposed to crack.
Yes, well said. And Brecht himself was quoted as saying, art is not a mirror with which to reflect reality, but a hammer with which to shape it.
Oh my.
But as we've already started alluding to, the problem is Brecht didn't actually write his own plays.
Ugh.
I'm not saying he didn't have a hand in crafting them, but his tendency, or he has a long roster of women that he seduced and convinced them to pretty much write plays for him. And he did this, he was said to be very charismatic, that he can talk anybody into anything. And he would get women to write plays for him by promising them that he'd marry them.
Oh my God.
And Margarete Steffin was one of many women who was said to have been a woman that Brecht swindled, basically. She also, in addition to writing so much of his most notable work, she also helped him get out of Germany when Hitler was coming on board and he needed to make a quick escape.
Wow.
But more about that later. According to Brecht scholar John Fuji, Steffin wrote at least 8 of Brecht's masterpieces that are known worldwide,
Oh, God.
including Mother Courage and Her Children,
Holy shit.
The Good Person of Szechuan, Life of Galileo, and early drafts of The Caucasian Chalk Circle, to name just a few major pieces of work.
Yeah, just a few.
And all of these manuscripts were found in Steffin's handwriting and are drawn from source material that was written in French, which so happens Brecht couldn't read.
What?
Yeah, so makes you a little more than suspicious. Despite his purposely shabby dress and unwashed stents and rotting teeth, which has to do with his
How
proletarian...
attractive.
Well, it had to do
I
with...
think I want to marry him.
He was aligned with the working class and wanted to look like he was part of the working class. And even with the shabby persona, he was able to hypnotize just about almost anyone, according to Fuji.
Even with rotting teeth, huh?
He was believed to be able to hypnotize anyone, to do anything that he wanted.
Wow.
And part of this may have been his talents with women in the bedroom. Apparently, he was quite a good lover.
Wow.
But he was known to have also persuaded men to do incredible things for him.
Was he bisexual?
No, I didn't get that impression.
Okay.
But he was apparently very charismatic or persuasive.
Okay.
And he often kept several different mistresses, which his wife was aware of. And even when he fled Nazi Germany, thanks to our Sheela, he actually left not only with his wife and 2 children, but 2 other women, both of whom were actively writing plays for him in exchange for promises of marriage. And I don't know how you leave with your lover and his wife and children and think you're getting married. Two lovers.
So he had like this corral of women that he just kind of called upon to write his scripts. Oh my God.
Well, Frege reported that the saddest case of all of the women that he really got to help him and quote unquote collaborate with him.
Oh, collaborate.
Yeah,
It sounds like a collaboration for sure.
Yeah. She is being a little sarcastic. But Frege felt that the worst case was Margarete Steffin. And he shows that Steffin, who first of all suffered working herself to the bone on behalf of Brecht, was almost single-handedly responsible for Courage and Szechuan, as well as Galileo, and the early drafts, as I mentioned, of Chalk Circle, and at least 4 other plays, a novel, and countless poems and stories, all published under Brecht's name.
Oh my God.
And this was
Just sickening.
Yeah, and again, it was despite the obvious questions raised by his inability to read French or other languages that source material came from related to these works. And the fact that all these manuscripts were also in Marguerite's handwriting.
Oh, how interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at most, Brecht served as editor, according to Frege, of his work rather than creator of his work, sometimes contributing 10% of the actual writing. Now, he does feel that Brecht did contribute some to what is known as Brecht's writing, but 10% is far from 100.
Yeah, it's kind of like F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Yes,
I see
very reminiscent.
similarities here.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I want to share more about Marguerite Emilie Charlotte Steffin because she is a Sheela not just because she created these wonderful masterpieces, but she was a masterful human being. She was born into a very poor, low middle class, working family on March 21st, 1908, in Rummelsburg, Pomerania, in Imperial Germany. Her father was a coachman and later a factory and construction worker, and he's had this very strong proletarian class consciousness. It was very much the blue-collar, hard-working class guy, the opposite of an aristocrat. And he took pride in that position in life. During World War I, he was assigned to the army, and he left their mother, Johanna, to earn money at an ammunition factory. And before that, she took in sewing just to keep the family afloat. Marguerite and her younger sister, Herta, were put into the town's child care center where she absorbed pious Protestant values and a severe conscious and deep sense of obligation. So later on when we think, why was she so loyal to Brecht, it could be that her roots in this child care program that was so entrenched in Protestant values and ideology of service and giving of oneself may have been a foundational reason.
Yes. Can we just go back to the child care system? Because this is, what year?
This was the early 1900s.
Okay. And, I mean, this is revolutionary. I mean, they had a child, so your parents could go to work,
Mm-hmm.
And you would go to the child care.
Yes, yeah.
Wow, the
Well,
Germans
this
are
is
smart.
Germany.
Yeah,
Right.
the Germans were smart.
They're
Wow, they had,
progressive. They figured it out before we did.
I guess this, and I'll bet you it was free.
I believe it was, yes.
Of course it was. Oh my God, we still need to figure that out here in the U.S. But anyway, I digress. I just wanted to make a note of that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And she came from an interesting family. Her mother, while she worked very hard and shouldn't have had time for any other interests or passions, she was considered an avid reader and she attended the theater regularly, especially political plays. So the family was politically conscious and aware, and her mother just had a passion for plays and theater and literature that I think rubbed off on Marguerite. So in 1909, Johanna also sadly gave birth to a boy, Hermann Wilhelm Albert, who died very shortly after his birth in 1913. And her father was among the first round of draftees conscripted into the German Imperial Army in August 1914, so the family didn't have an easy time of it.
Yeah.
Not too surprisingly, though, given her mother's love of literature and Marguerite's encouragement to go to school early and study, she became a very gifted student. When she was 13, she won a prize for a story she wrote. It was an hour-long verse drama. I believe it was a Christmas story, and it was performed in 3 different schools.
Wow.
And the teachers were just so taken with her and really pegged her to be sent to a college preparatory high school with the idea that she would go on to university. But her father, who again was this very proud proletarian man, absolutely refused.
Oh my God.
He didn't want his daughter to become an intellectual and alienated from her working class roots.
How threatening. How threatening that would be to have an intellectual daughter.
Well, apparently it was. So instead, at age 14, Marguerite dropped out of school and took a job as an errand girl for the German telephone company.
Okay.
But in opposition to her father, because there is some signs of Marguerite being a little defiant and
Good for her.
yeah. She continued her education through evening courses and lectures, and she was said to be an obsessive reader.
Nice.
And the proletariat cultural movement became basically her institution of higher learning. She dug into her family roots in terms of social class, and she joined the Workers' Athletic Association, which had tied to the Communist Party of Germany. She learned Russian on her own and gave recitations and Sunday matinees. And in 1931, she appeared in the Red Reviews. So she really embraced communism and the working class and all of the things that went with it. Very notably in her life, she took some lessons in speech technique from one Helene Weigel at the Marxist Workers' School. And in the premiere performance of Weigel's husband's Brecht, Bertold Brecht's Die Mutter, or known as The Mother in English, on January 1932 at the Berlin Theater, his wife Weigel had the title role, and Steffin made her appearance as a servant girl. By the way, Marguerite was called by many Greet, and that's how I will refer to her.
Great.
And she was very politically conscious, as we were saying, at an early age. And she was drawn to the social democratic fraction of the Germans' left, which was a humane socialism. But she kept drifting further left and became a communist and a supporter of Joseph Stalin, who had an iron grip on the German Communist Party starting around 1930. Greed's involvement with the progressive politics and left-wing arts organizations included creating vanguard art that challenged like the bourgeoisie status quo. You know, it really, so the challenging or dislike of the bourgeoisie really kept creeping in and extending itself to art. And this was where Greed really had an opportunity because of her own inclinations as an artist, as an actress, as a writer, to express her feelings and her beliefs through her art. So art and politics was intertwined throughout this era. And Greet was able to indulge her passion for singing and acting in ways that were politically meaningful for her. And she also helped put out a guerrilla newspaper. And as I mentioned, she took Russian language lessons. And for the rest of her life, she was also, in addition to these other talents, a very gifted translator. She spoke several languages.
Wow.
Yeah, so you could see that she was more than just a woman seduced by this charismatic man, but she was a force to be reckoned with and definitely had a mind of her own, even if Brecht did eventually eclipse her. So in the
Eclipse.
In the fall of 1927, Greet began a long affair with a young man named Herbert Dimketot. And Dimketot was an office worker and a member of the Fichte group, which was a German propaganda agency that was named after Johann Gottlieb Fichte. And Fichte was a German idealist philosopher who influenced German nationalism and the Romantic movement. So she really connected initially with Herbert, but the two didn't earn enough money to marry, so they just pursued their relationship. And it did become troubled because, among other things, Herbert was a bit of a philanderer and was known to have other women.
Oh.
And Greet had to terminate 2 pregnancies during her relationship with him.
Greet.
And in her poetry and prose, she later described the first agonizing procedure, her abortion, performed by a back alley abortionist.
See, that's why I said, oh, Greet, because
Yeah.
I had a feeling that it wasn't going to be a good experience.
Yeah. She did eventually break off with Dimketot in the spring of 1931, and a few months later, she became better acquainted with Brecht through her involvement at the Schiffbauer Dam Theater, where she was performing in one of his plays. And she also began helping out at the theater as a secretary. Again, she had a lot of skill, a lot of talent, spoke multiple languages. And her working relationship with Brecht soon turned into a very passionate love affair.
Wow.
So again, she met Brecht through taking speech courses with Helene Wengel, his wife, or it's not clear if she was his wife or common law wife. That keeps getting, depending upon different sources.
Apparently he was wealthy enough to marry. I like earlier, I'm sorry, I'm going back, but you said that they couldn't marry because they weren't wealthy enough.
Right.
But
no, that was Greed.
No, I know, but
Yeah.
I'm just going back to that for a minute because I thought that was interesting that they
Yes.
couldn't marry because they weren't well.
They didn't
That's
have
the
enough
idea. You
money.
combine your income and you get married, right? You get hitched. I don't know.
Well, I'm just reporting.
They were German. They were very sensible.
They were sensible. Well, yeah, I mean, the guys especially, they had all these other women, and apparently Brecht's wife, or whether she was common law or legal wife, was tolerant of these other lovers, including Greet, and Greet having this open affair with Brecht under Helene's nose. But anyway, I digress. Brecht was completely impressed with Greet's knowledge of literature, theater, and Marxist theory. Also, as a genuine child of the working class, like I said, she educated him on the proletarian lifestyle and educated him on the working class, which he was interested in and wanted to use for his plays and other writings. So he got a gold mine in her.
Yeah, certainly.
And she really continued to become, over their 9.5, 10-year relationship, absolutely indispensable to him in very practical terms.
Yes.
It is believed that she wanted to have or hoped to have an exclusive permanent relationship with Brecht, and he gave her a ring and insisted that she wear it. But Brecht wasn't what you would call a monogamist. But the two spent a lot of time together between 1932 and 1933, working in many locations, including Berlin and Moscow, Tussing, and Paris. But Greet had developed at a very young age tuberculosis. And from 1931 on, she had to endure many, many hospital stays and operations. And Brecht and another colleague of his, Hans Eisler, arranged for her to be in a sanitarium in Crimea in the Soviet Union between May and June of 1932. And in the spring of 33, she had a sanatorium bed in Tessen, which was in Switzerland. I think Tessen is no longer the name. They changed the name, but it was in Switzerland. And at least during these stays, Grieg used those opportunities to write her own poetry in prose and articles. Oh, nice. And Brecht did cover the cost and make those arrangements on her behalf. Her poems and her prose were mostly autobiographical.
He earned that, though.
Yes, she did.
I mean, he better have paid for that. That's all I can think. I'm sorry.
Well, she worked as his secretary, a translator. She wrote for him. You know,
she did all. She wrote his plays.
Yeah. Just a few things.
Yeah, just a few things.
Anyway, her own work was mostly considered autobiographical and very focused on working class life. And her sonnets to Beatty, as she called Brecht, showcased her significant talent. She also wrote 2 plays for children and translated works by Russian, Norwegian, Swedish, and Danish authors.
Wow.
She developed a theatrical piece together with Helle Lewicki that eventually became the Brechtonian drama known as Puntella und sin Connect Mate. And if I mispronounced that in any way, my apologies. Sadly, almost nothing of what Grieg wrote appeared during her lifetime. A lot of her genius was discovered, sadly, after the fact.
Oh, and we hear this a lot, unfortunately.
We do. And of course, also along with her ultimate literary success would have been literary funds, but she didn't get any of that either. And her poverty really did impact not only her, but her family. But I'll get into a little bit more of that later. For Grieg, her relationship with Brecht was deep physical and emotional love. And she was quoted as saying, "Loving him, I began to love myself too." So he did open up something in her.
Yeah.
And his wife, Helene...
Well, there had to be something, I would hope.
Yeah.
I would hope.
Well, something kept her connected.
Yeah.
Brecht's wife, Helene, was resigned to the affair. She did consider divorcing Brecht in the spring of 1933, but the polyamorous Brecht decided, after all, in favor of Helene and the children and followed them to Denmark at the end of June 1933, without, however, letting go of Grieg.
Of course not. He needed her too much.
He did. And to make matters worse, the Dane Ruth Berlau Lund became Brecht's favored mistress in 1935, and Grieg felt totally betrayed, saying, "I love him so much that I'll die of it." And I'm not entirely sure that wasn't true.
Oh. And I mean, during this time, are these other women having affairs as well?
It's not clear.
I would wonder about that. I would hope so.
But what?
It's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, right?
Well, one of the things... Fuigi's work, John Fuigi was the journalist who really uncovered or unearthed all the plagiarism and more about Brecht. Mm-hmm. And what he really felt was that he was masterful getting people to just yield to his will and do his bidding. And so I would be suspect that these women had other lovers, because it seemed that Brecht had this idea that he was non-reciprocal. It should all be serving him. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So it's said that Brecht used his circle of collaborators, people who wrote for him, including students and assistants, to produce the works that he presented to the world in his own name. And while the collaborators did all the research, the translation, drafting of text, it was Brecht with his poetic genius who provided the final strokes or brushworks to create the final draft, as well as provide songs or poetry of his own, though it is believed that the great poet was not above pilfering lyrics and presenting them as his own as well.
No.
Well, very credibly, Hauptmann was attributed to writing the lyrics for the famous Alabama song, as Brecht did not speak English at the time, and the language the song was written in was none other than English. And that was Elizabeth Hauptmann. While still contested by some true believers in the solitary nature of genius, It's generally known that Griet and others played a really central role in Brecht's what we call workshop of collaborators. And his first collaborator was Elizabeth Hauptmann, who translated John Gay's 18th century masterpiece, The Beggar's Opera, and this served as the basis of what became the Threepenny Opera, Brecht's most popular work. And it was believed that as much as three-quarters of Threepenny Opera was written by Hauptmann without getting any proper credit or remuneration.
Oh, it's so sad.
It is sad.
Such a bummer.
But as I mentioned, Margarete Steffin served not just Brecht, but his family for 10 years, including his wife. And she was, as I mentioned, a secretary. She was a political sounding board for him, not to mention his mistress, a translator. And often she did these things to the detriment of her own health because she had tuberculosis.
Oh.
And she was often traveling with Brecht to live in countries like Denmark where they had unhealthful climates. And she never would leave Brecht's side during the mid-1930s to be of service to him, even though, medically she really was quite ill. But he did, as I mentioned, help her from time to time with sanatoriums.
Poor Brecht.
Sanatoriums when the
tuberculosis. That's so nice of him.
Got out
How
of hand.
good of him. What a wonderful man.
But as I alluded to earlier, Griet was also instrumental in orchestrating Brecht and his family's European exile. She not only was secretary and critical editor and literary agent, she was general organizer. And during the rise of Stalinism in Russia, Griet had early on proposed the immigration of the whole Brechtian extended family to the U.S. so that he can continue his genius, if that became a threat. And she pursued the goal of getting him out to emigrate unrelentingly. She actually raised money for the immigration, mostly through her own translation work of other writers. And she made all of the arrangements so the Brecht family could cross the USSR and go into exile in the U.S. before the rise of the Nazi Party.
Wow.
And as I mentioned,
wow.
She's
so
did
selfless.
Just selfless. In fairness, she was supposed to go with all of them.
Oh, she was. Okay.
Yes.
That helps a little bit, but still.
Wife, children, and other collaborating mistresses.
Okay.
Okay.
The whole corral. The Brecht corral.
Yes, the Brecht extended family. So Griet was again supposed to immigrate, but very tragically, she became too ill and too frail to emigrate when the time came.
Oh, God.
And very sadly, she died of tuberculosis in a sanitarium in Moscow in June 1941 during the last days of the German-Soviet non-aggression pact prior to the Nazi invasion of the Soviet Union, which occurred on June 22nd. So really just a few weeks before that.
Oh, my God. It's so sad.
Just before she died, Griet received a telegram from Brecht saying that he and his family did make their way across the USSR to seek asylum in the U.S. And so you might say that she maybe died feeling a little gratitude because she was so invested in him immigrating.
You might say that, yeah.
Her friend Maria Osten, who checked on her daily at the sanatorium, arrived 2 minutes too late to say goodbye to Griet. According to Osten's correspondence with Brecht, an autopsy the following day revealed that her disease had almost completely eroded her lungs, and a plaster cast of her face and her hands were made for Brecht before she was cremated on June 6th.
Wow.
You can't.
At his request?
At his request. Apparently, he was very grateful to her. He loved her. He had feelings for her. But this was a man who just used people.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, I guess, that
he was a
didn't
narcissist,
have
and the whole world
her.
revolved around him, and she was just part of that world.
Yeah.
That was serving him.
Right. So, as I've been saying, Griet is now regularly credited as co-author, at least, of Brecht's greatest classics, Mother Courage, Galileo, and Caucasian Chalk Circle, having provided a great deal of preliminary text for Brecht, and it's believed that he polished the final output and then presented the solo work as his own genius. And it was said that she collaborated, as we've been saying, out of love and fealty to the collective principle, because that was the other thing. She believed in the proletarian spirit of the working class and the Protestant work ethic. So this wasn't about, she was not the opposite of a narcissist.
Yeah.
Maybe part of it was the idea that this is collective work. However, John Fuji, the founder of the International Brecht Society, points out in his 1944 biography, Brecht and Company, Sex, Politics, and the Making of Modern Drama, that, and I quote, "For the great poet, it was a one-way street. Not only did he not share credit, but he also didn't share royalties, which could have made a major difference in Steffin's impoverished family, who lived in poverty in the Democratic Republic of Germany, otherwise known as East Germany, after the war."
There's a lot of things he could have fucking done.
He could have and didn't.
Yes.
Did it?
Yes.
Interestingly enough, after Greet's death and after the war, a street was named after her in Berlin, Germany, entitled the Margarete Steffin Strasse, south of Humboldt University. Yes. And Humboldt University is Berlin's oldest university, and Humboldt was the alma mater of her idol Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. And it was a leading university of the Democratic Republic of East Germany until the collapse of communism in 1989, and then eventually became part of the state university system of the Federal Republic of Germany. But the point being, ironically, Greet's father wouldn't let her attend university. Yeah. That was an insult to her class, and here she received
an insult to her class.
and yet she received this wonderful honor of having a street named after her at one of the most prestigious universities with ties to Marxism.
Well deserved.
Yeah. In the works from the Brecht factory, going back to that wonderful collective, it's difficult to isolate Greet's exact contribution since the writing was done as a collective, and Brecht and his publishers, especially the later ones, often failed to mention her name at all, not even mentioning her as part of the collective. Nevertheless, concerning the three-penny novel, at least, it is clear from letters and other materials that she played a very decisive role, making significant corrections and lasting stylistic changes. Brecht's report on critics' positive reviews: "In general, you seem to have written a masterpiece, old mutt. Your clear, clean language comes in for special praise," it was written. Wow. So the years with Greet and Brecht were Brecht's most productive. And he stated after her death, "For the first time in 10 years, I'm not doing any decent work." Imagine that.
He doesn't need to do any decent work.
Well, he couldn't do it if she wasn't there doing it for him.
Oh,
in the 9.5 years of their collaboration, the two completed 10 plays. Greet also worked on Mother Courage and the poetry editions that she made during her year when she was consigned to the sanatorium. Lee Walkner, a Los Angeles playwright and artistic director of Moving Arts, a theater he helped found, wrote of Brecht, "Though major artists routinely come in for critical tarrings, never has one fared so badly and so deservedly at the hands of a biographer as Brecht does now. With Brecht and Company, Brecht scholar John Fuji shatters all of our assumptions about the premier theatrical artist of the 20th century, including the notion that Brecht actually wrote his own works." So, there's little doubt that Brecht had a magnetic personality, and Fuji describes young Brecht performing his own songs cabaret style in the 1920s Germany as bespoke of Elvis Presley.
Oh my God. That's hilarious.
He writes, "In Secretary or Business Tycoon, the male or female's knees weakened at the inhibition slipping away of Brecht, in his favorite performing stance, stood above them on a table at bars and brothels or fashionable apartments, with his feet spread apart, guitar pressed close to his crotch, almost concave belly thrust forward. He made the animal grunt strings howl to back up his high, scratchy voice. People came
Wow.
and saw and heard, were completely conquered.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
he was his own
He
force
was
to be
charismatic.
reckoned with.
Let's give him that. He was charismatic, manipulative.
Yeah. They say in person he was so persuasive. I love this. This is great. When he got to the United States, he was even able to gull the House Committee on Un-American Activities into believing that he was nothing more than an absent-minded playwright who had absolutely nothing to do with communism and who rarely associated with communists. This was while the world-famous Brecht had a tactical agreement with Stalin to receive regular stipends in exchange for his silence
Wow.
about the dictator's slaughtering of millions.
Whoa.
So Brecht, to say he was persuasive was a little understatement.
Wow.
Brecht was clearly a world-class writer whose life would have been spared with regular medical treatment that Brecht surely could have afforded. In Fuiji's writing, he states, space does not permit a full list of Brecht's unscrupulous acts, stretching as they do through his entire lifetime until his death in 1956. Suffice to say, he rode roughshod over everyone he met, from composer and partner Kurt Weill. Brecht routinely resold the Threepenny Opera, which had over 10,000 productions in the first 5 years, without reporting any earnings to Weill. And yet, somehow, he got away with it all. No one's service were ever recognized or repaid, and only death allowed an escape from his spell. Even Elizabeth Hauptmann, who is shown to be the actual author of many of Brecht's poems and early plays, actually returned to his employ after a 20-year absence. After breaking away from Brecht, she had found it nearly impossible to publish under her own name, especially since all of her best work had been internationally established as having been his.
Oh, God.
It is difficult to imagine any writer so gladly creating one masterpiece after another in complete anonymity with no hope of future income, as did Brecht, Hauptmann, and another collaborator, Bertold. Even more so than death, writers fear being plagiarized, but Fuiji's 25 years of research have unearthed a wealth of collaboration, and he backs the searing portrait of artist as monster with extensive footnotes.
Wow.
Perhaps if Brecht were indeed the major artist we had assumed, his actions might be somewhat more forgivable. Arrogance is often a requirement for genius, but as Fuiji deflates Brecht's stature, he correspondingly forces us all to hold him that much more accountable. Brecht himself once said, "What I don't like to admit is that I myself have contempt for the unfortunate." A would-be set designer with a similar outlook was unfortunately not hired by Brecht. Later on, he went on to greater fame and fortune, and his name was Adolf Hitler.
Oh, my God.
So,
Oh, my God. Really?
yeah.
I was seeing similarities between old Adolf and Bertolt Brecht as you were talking about this.
Well, they apparently, Stalin and Hitler and Brecht knew each other and at points earlier back in Germany. But it was really, I don't want to lose the thread of our Sheela, Margarete, Emily, Charlotte Steffin,
Of
who
course.
really was a brilliantly talented woman in many, many regards, including as an author and writer.
Yes.
And she was just a sad footnote to his plagiarism.
Yeah. It's very sad. Very sad. What is that comment you made about arrogance often being part of, genius, which can be true. But then you think about her, she was definitely a genius.
Yes, and she was not arrogant.
She didn't have an arrogant bone in her body, right? But the point being that he was a successful genius.
Right.
And she was not.
She was not.
So maybe there's something to be said for being a successful genius.
Well, I think you get more latitude, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that arrogance can take you far, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's just such a sad tale.
It is a sad tale.
It's just such an unfortunate tale. And again, her selflessness and her,
Her dedication.
yeah. I wonder if anybody ever said to her, like one of her girlfriends, like, what the fuck are you doing? Seriously, what are you doing? It's a detriment to your health. You're not taking care of yourself. Your whole world revolves around him.
But it sounds like none of that would have shaken her, that she was really dedicated to him. She was devoted to him.
Yeah, to the core.
To the core. To the core. And so...
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. It's very
It
sad.
was.
But think about her when you're reading Brecht.
Yes. Yes.
Think about Miss Steffin when you are reading Brecht.
And the other women
Yes.
who did contribute to the work. And again, it's impossible to know who exactly did what, but to really understand that there was a collective of great minds really coming together and transforming theater and really creating a new medium for people to really challenge their thinking and really wake up.
Certainly. Yeah.
Just too bad we have to call it Brechtonian.
Yes. I was a theater major, and this was back in, the 80s, the late 80s, Wayne State University in Detroit. And, certainly we read a lot of Brecht and studied him. But I had, at this point, I had never heard this. This was not common knowledge at that point.
No, I don't think it was unearthed until the 1990s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody just saw him as this, heroic genius.
And to this day, he is still getting the credit for the work, and we reference the body of his work and the meaning of his work under his name.
Right, and there are people who don't believe it too, right?
Yes.
There are
Yes,
just like with
definitely.
F. Scott Fitzgerald, it's very
Right.
controversial because there's a lot of people who say that, Zelda was not, writing the majority of his material.
Of course, you have
But
this
there's quite a bit of
beloved-
evidence to say that she was, just like in this case, there was quite a bit of evidence.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, April, I'm very glad that you brought this to the forefront. I'm very glad. I knew of it, but I didn't know names, circumstances. I just knew of it. So this is like what I'm talking about with this podcast. I love that we can bring these stories to light,
Yes.
and tell them, and you can learn a little bit more because it's so important.
It is. It really
And
is.
she's an amazing Sheela. We
is.
love Greet.
Yes.
We love Greet.
We do.
You'll see a picture of her soon,
Yes.
well, you will see a picture when we post this, of course. And thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, and please send us your comments. We love hearing from you.
We love hearing from you. All right, talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Sheela, Sheela,